Austin's getting ready to bring you something that you haven't heard before that, in my opinion, is spot on.
Okay, so when we look at this organization, you look at its top and down. One of the things that this organization intentionally tries to do really well is take care of their players. You talk about the way, even dating down to the minor league level, the way that they treat their minor league players for years. They have fed them. They have done things that other organizations have laughed at, but have turned out to become the standard of Major League Baseball. They had made sure that their players are as healthy. You talk about what they do to their Major League guys, not just the guys that have been part of their organization, but guys that get brought in for an organization. You remember last year, one of the guys that they brought in was Nick Ahmed. Do you know what the Dodgers did intentionally when Nick Ahmed was around? They kept him around just a little bit long enough to where he could reach 10 years of service time. Now, this is what is important about 10 years of service time. If this is something that you are unfamiliar with, once you reach 10 years of service time, you get pension for Major League Baseball, which means for the rest of your life, you're pretty much set. There's payments that you're able to receive. You're well taken care of because you have served the game of baseball for an extended period of time. Nick Ahmed does not have a great history with the Dodgers, but the Dodgers, when they were in need of a shortstop, pulled him over from, I believe it was San Francisco, when he was cut just short of his 10-year mark, and made sure that he got that. Now we talk about a player like Chris Taylor. CT3 is not the same player that he was before. Let's just be straight and honest. Last year was not a good year for Chris Taylor. He would be the first player to be able to admit that. However, if you look at where Chris Taylor is at, and this is something that I haven't paid attention a whole lot to, now it makes a lot of sense. He is currently at 9.037 service years. Now, the 0.37 just refers to the number of days of service time. So it's like, it's that until you get 162 and 162 games out of the year, then it becomes 10 years.
So that's 130 games?
It's about 125, 130 games, something like that.
To get to 10 years.
To get to 10 years. And now here's the thing about Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor was not very good last year. But what is Chris Taylor's role going to be on the 2025 roster?
Bench.
It's going to be bench. It's going to be, hey, you're going to go out there, play every couple of days or so. In order for Chris Taylor to reach the 10 years of service time, all he has to do is either stay on the active roster or be placed on the injured list. So if he spends a lot of time, if he gets hurt in spring training for some unfortunate reason, the Dodgers would keep him around and he would receive his 10 years of pension. All he has to do in order to get that, which if we're talking about this organization, if this organization goes out there and makes sure that Nick Ahmed gets the 10 years of service time, for a player like Chris Taylor, who has meant a ton to this organization, for 200 plate appearances, if you're talking about 200 plate appearances with this stacked of a roster, with this team, with a player that can move around a little bit, who might not be that good, could have a little bit of a bounce back. If we're talking about this organization that wants to build a culture of helping be a player organization, that seems like something that it doesn't matter necessarily that Chris Taylor isn't the greatest player in the world. He's not. And if you trade him to another organization, honestly, there could be other organizations that look at him for a month or two and then decide to cut him. I don't think the Dodgers want to take that chance with the player that has meant so much to this organization. I think they want to do everything they can to treat their players right. And for Chris Taylor, I think that likely means 200 plate appearances, get him to his 10 years of pension, see where the production is. And if the production's not there, you have some backup options at the minor league level. You will have a Dalton Rushing, you will have an Alex Freeland. You have guys that can be able to help fill in that holes, fill in that roles. But I think this organization feels a dedication of loyalty to players. And here's where this comes in. Here's where this is important, is because, yes, you could take the baseball evaluation side and say, yes, a player like Kike Hernandez should fill in Chris Taylor's shoes, and that would be better for the organization because it would make the team better. Certainly you hear that argument. But one of the things that we hear a lot about the organization is players want to come to this organization. They want to be part of the Los Angeles Dodgers, specifically because of how they treat their players, because of the family-led culture. And if you're the Dodgers, if you have the opportunity to be able to keep a bench guy around and still be able to make it to the postseason, still be able to win a whole lot of games without hampering your ability, and you want to reaffirm that foundation so that another player can take another deal and want to join the Dodgers, even though he has better offers from other teams, I'm starting to think, and I'm starting to become very much convinced that a player like Chris Taylor is going to be around until he reaches that 10 years. A player like a Max Muncy, who's at a little over 8 years, will be around not just for this season, but the following season, because the exact same situation, what he's met. And maybe even a player like an Austin Barnes, who it depends on how he does this year and if he sticks around the whole season, but he's about 8.5 years of service time. The organization likes to treat their players right. That could be something that blinds them a little bit and causes them not to upgrade their weakness, but also it could lead to opportunities. So I think Chris Taylor, a little bit of a hot take, is going to be around for the Dodgers for at least until he reaches that 10 years of service time. Something that I didn't initially read, not something I've completely come up with. I've read some comments about it. Don't remember exactly where, but it makes a whole lot of sense why the Dodgers continue to keep around Chris Taylor.
So what you're saying is, like, how many more games would the Dodgers win because Kike Hernandez is on the roster instead of Chris Taylor?
Marginal at best.
Marginal?
Especially if you remember, Kike Hernandez was not a good player during the regular season last year, which is
Understood.
not it's meant to attack Kike Hernandez or say that he could be a better player. Was vastly a different player than when he wore glasses and when he's not. But we're talking about 150, 200 plate appearances for Chris Taylor. It's not a very significant amount of time at the plate.
And this roster is so good that if you're having to rely on Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez to win games, something went wrong, right? Yeah. I mean, this Dodgers roster is not set up for Chris Taylor or Kike Hernandez at the moment to be any kind of factor. Beyond, and I know we talk about the Dodgers are great on the margins, and that's a larger reason why they win, but beyond any kind of slight margin, I don't think even makes any difference. So to say that, the Dodgers want to be the destination for free agents, and they have been. And part of the way you become a destination for free agents is if they know you'll do exactly for them like they did Nick Ahmed, and they'll stick with you to get you to a benchmark, or what they're in the process of doing for Chris Taylor, whereas getting him to that 10-year pension. And so Chris Taylor, who's been with the Dodgers since 2015, the Dodgers traded for him back then. He came to the Dodgers. He's helped the Dodgers win 2 World Series in some way, shape, or form. He's been very loyal. Was he good last year? No. Okay, so here's the other option, okay? You cut Chris Taylor short of the 10-year pension by 50 days so you can go get somebody else on the roster that maybe or maybe doesn't help you win 1 or 2 games within a divisional race where you're already up 10 games on the divisional race, right? So what is the point in sticking it to Chris Taylor and not allowing him to get to that pension for what? Well, I mean, I guess my question is why? What would be the purpose of that?
It's a very good question. And here's just another, if you look and evaluate, and this is something I hadn't really paid attention to, but now it makes a lot of sense. You look at their free agents of what they've signed, look at some of the contract lengths that they get to. You look at a player, obviously Shohei Ohtani, well past the pension. Blake Snell, well past the pension, already had 8 years of service, 5-year deal. Tyler Glass now, he has 3 more years left on his deal.
Yes.
He's at 7 years of service time. That's going to take him to 10 years.
Correct.
Yoshi Yamamoto signed a long-term deal with the Dodgers. Mookie Betts, long-term deal. Freddie Freeman, obviously. But you look at Teoscar Hernandez, 3-year deal. Well, it's a club option. Currently at 7 years of service, 10-year pension of what he's got. Tanner Scott, 6 years of service. Dodgers signed him to a 4-year deal, takes him to his 10 years of pension. Chris Taylor is 1 more year, but his initial term when he signed that 4-year deal, 6 years of service, it takes him to his pension. Tommy Edman.
This is all intentional, by the way.
Yes. Tommy Edman, 5 years of service right now, signs a 5-year extension. That takes him to his 10 years of pension as well. You look at Will Smith signed a long-term deal. Max Muncy has a club option for his 10th year of pension. They got Blake Trinan to 10 years as well. Miguel Rojas got to 10 years last year. All of this stuff starts adding up. Austin Barnes is close to his 10 years, even though he's not quite there yet. That'll be a little bit of a different or tougher conversation to be able to have depending on his production and the upcoming of like a Dalton Rushing, and how do you handle that situation? But the Dodgers are very intentional about making sure that they go ahead and treat their players right. They treat their players well, and that is a very good thing to be able to have, and why a lot of players want to come over to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So why would you halt short of a player if it's not going to make the biggest impact on the roster, if it's more of a bench bat, if you want to be that destination franchise, if you want to have players, the superstar players want to come over to the Dodgers? It's not just the way you treat your star players. It is the way that you treat every single player. It is the way that you treat the Chris Taylors. It is the way that you treat the minor leaguers. That all of this stuff matters if you want to build this dynasty. So I think it's one of those things where in the offseason, yes, baseball, logistic-wise, if you want to make the best team, makes a lot of sense. And I've even stated on the show that it makes a lot of sense to move off of a Chris Taylor. But person-wise, because there's a lot more to this than just the baseball analytics type thing. Personal wise, it makes a lot of sense to be able to keep Chris Taylor, at least until that mark, to be able to keep your word and to be able to, as you look at a lot of the contracts, do exactly what they have or are starting to build a little bit of a track record, taking care of a lot of these players, which opens up the door for talent to be able to come in. Yes, money helps, but the way you treat players also opens up doors.
Mm-hmm. It does. And really, I mean, if you cut Chris Taylor 40 days in front of his 10-year pension, I mean, it just
it's
when you're going to be up on the division 10 games anyways, you should. I mean, with the roster the Dodgers have, with the pitching staff they have, the bullpen they have, the offense they had, they should win this division going away, right?
Yes.
So to cut Chris Taylor short 30, 40 days on his 10-year pension, if everything goes the way that you built it, you're going to have a 10-game lead in the division anyways. That wouldn't sit right with me from a personal perspective, but it is what it is. And I really do think, Austin, whether you agree with that or not, I really do think, other than the fact that the Dodgers do owe money, but when you look at all the money the Dodgers are spending in this, and I don't think it's coming down to the money as to why the Dodgers are keeping Chris Taylor. I think they're keeping Chris Taylor for exactly the narrative that you just gave.
I think the Dodgers are looking at ways to be able to, yes, maximize the roster as best as they can, but also potentially find ways to be able to maximize rosters of the future, because we've seen other organizations cut players short of some sort of reward. I remember back to, and I don't mean to pick on this organization, but Pittsburgh with, I believe it was Rowdy Tellez or somebody like that, was 4 at-bats short of receiving a bonus, and they decide to release him. Right before he's going to release the bonus. The Dodgers don't want to operate like that because they want to go out there and get the best players possible. So it makes a lot of sense why this would be a situation. The fallout for it and what you want to do with Kike Hernandez, you got to be willing to make some sort of sacrifice bringing back Kike Hernandez, either opportunities and a roster spot for some of the guys that you mentioned and potentially some decrease in value for them. And also maybe not the ability to bring up Dalton Rushing, Alex Freeland, or whoever gets hot at the start of the season at the AAA level.
Yeah, right.
That could be a sacrifice that you'd be willing to make for a Kike Hernandez. One sacrifice I'm not anticipating at this point, not just because of money-wise, but because of player loyalty-wise, has to do with Chris Taylor.